Good morning, this is Joe. It's December 18th, 2024, and I'm in the cellar of my house. I can sometimes go a while before I come down here, but I do like to look in here every now and again to see what's going on. Here's the story. The cellar is just barely enough for me to stand up in. I have to duck to go under these forced hot air conduits, and you're looking at the northwest corner where the service panel is. And I might as well get closer to the service panel, try to give you a better tour. But essentially, they did have a breaker box when we got here. It seems to be a 100 amp entrance. And we've added things to it. My son-in-law always advises me as to how to do stuff, and I do have a Klein electrical presence or absence checker that I always employ before working here. And it's very nice to have this. I've added a bunch of circuits over the course of time. When I first got here, within a month, Mitch and I had really decided the whole electrical system was unsafe and we were at risk of a fire. We've got to shut it all off and only trust those wires which we've personally checked along the entire length and disconnect everything else. So we're beyond that because I spent a lot of time down here working on this, but one of the things is like the wire to the furnace, the wire to the hot water tank, the wire to the whole cold water tank, and the sump pump. We could see those the whole length. And so some of those we left, but anything with conduit in it, we replaced. And so that's been kind of the adventure here. One of the things that's happened here is, in order to wire it to get electrical access, I ran a whole bunch of new wire, and the thing here is that it gets really confusing. So one of the things I typically did was write on the actual wire where it went and what it was going to. Then also you'll see these greenish tapes here that say what it goes to, so that it's a little easier to me to remember when I'm tracking what's going on. I do come down here at least once a week in wintertime to check fuel consumption, because I've got fuel oil with forced hot air furnace, and I'm happy to say that I've got a half a tank left, and last week the bottom of that red thing was right at the black line where now the top of it is. So was really more like 10 days ago. So I'm pretty conservative about burning oil. I'm happy to say it saves me money. This was filled in April, so I don't use all that much heat. Obviously, since April, there was a lot of warm months where it was just plain off. Like all New Englanders, or all real New Englanders, there's a date in spring where you turn the red switch off, and then there's a date in fall where you turn it back on again. And I did make it to roughly Columbus Day before I turned the switch on, and all that stuff. Now, so basically when we got here, when Mitch and I were looking at this place to say whether I should buy it, we went down here, and there was basically about 8 inches of water in the whole thing. And because the lights were on, we didn't know how much electricity might be flowing in there or whatever. So we just basically sat on the steps here, surveyed the water problem, decided it would be good if we requested the seller to fix the sump pump before we would close, but didn't really get much further into it. Now, the thing that prompted me to get here is one of the ongoing themes of renovation of this particular house has been water in the cellar ever since then. And I have to tell you, so Mitch and I essentially were giddy laughing like hyenas to see how bad the water situation was. Evidently about 5 years ago there was a really, really deep problem. The sump pump had failed and there was 3 feet of water in here, which caused them to replace the hot water tank, the cold water tank, and the furnace, which turns out, you know, saved me money or aggravation because those are relatively new compared to the house. Now, so here's the problem, which is the house has some, I don't know how to see what we have. Some of the joists here are those half-timbered things that have the bark on them, just laid into it because it's a post and beam house. And then some of them are, you know, were put through a sawmill. Some of the main beams are basically 10 by 10 inch hemlock, which it's like, I'm very new to the idea of working with hemlock in carpentry. It has its own challenges. But the thing here is that if you have a beam that goes all the way across and it's holding up the house above it, there's limits on how far the beam can run unsupported before it'll stress itself out. And the older it gets, the more brittle it might be. So they use these lally columns. This rust-colored thing with the screw top is a lally column. And because of the water thing, some of these gray ones that are a little older, they stood in 6 inches of water for periods of time, who knows how long, on and off. And they were really, really rusty. And so a couple summers ago, that same summer, we had added to them and shored this up, because the last thing you want to do is to have a rusty lally column fail and then cause your 10 by 10 inch beam to crack in the middle and fall into the cellar, and then everything else on the inside of the house collapse around it. So we're talking about needing to think about how to shore up structural elements that are essentially holding the house up. It's not merely the edge of the house that where the foundation is. You've got to have these posts in some way or another, especially in an old post and beam house. So the solution has been, first we just put up some new ones, and that was cool. But then about time I got around to this, what I decided I needed to do was just put a small pile of concrete bricks there at the bottom so that you can get, like in the case of this one, we can have water 8 inches deep in here and it still won't quite reach the bottom of the metal. So this will not be subjected to the rusting and scaling that the rest of them did. And then I did another one and put that up here. I like to have those metal footings under there, but the metal footings are the wrong size to put under that, but that isn't going anywhere. But like that one over, there's 2 over here, and that one's a little bit rusty. Now if I go over here, you can kind of get a sense of how much rust was on that footing plate. But if you look over this way, here's one, and that just shows you how much scale there is. That was never going to last that long. That just rusts out and becomes unsafe. It becomes cosmetic or ornamental. Up here, and I'll take a picture. I did take a picture of the before and after. While I was down here, we've noticed that at the foot of the stairs going up, it's kind of, the floorboards were kind of jouncy. And come down here and look and realize this cross piece here had kind of separated. There was maybe a 3/4 inch gap. So the one I just took out temporarily, I've put that there and put some pressure on it so that it pushed it back in place. I've got some corner plates I'm going to put that'll secure it some more, and I think I probably am going to leave a lally column in this area just because I think it will prevent the floor from bouncing so much above me. And so that's kind of what the little project, and this, generally speaking, this is giving me peace of mind that I won't go to bed upstairs on the second floor and wake up in the basement after some cataclysmic rust fatigue failure of the lally posts. When we were first here, there'd been so much water in here that there was a permanent musty smell. And then also there had been a spot where the roof over kind of near the junction of the secret room had drained all its water just outside that section of wall, and there was all this wet dirt that had somehow been tracked in as water leaked into the cellar off the roof, which is where it's not supposed to go. So turns out there was a concrete pad under there. I shoveled all that wet dirt up and got rid of it. That had a lot to do with getting rid of the musty smell and all that. Now, I should say something about the stones here. The floor of this cellar is actually roughly around where maybe a foot or two above the usual water table. This is the whole problem with the brook. The water table goes up higher, and then this floods. So all these videos about shoveling out the brook like I was a World War I trench digger, that was to prevent water from coming in here. Now, we haven't had a lot of rain, but we did have a recent rain of about 1.5 inches. Got some water in here that was easily handled by the sump pump. And what had happened was this area had actually been at that level. The dirt outside had been that level, and it was a steep drop off from the road. They brought in hundreds and hundreds of cubic yards of dirt, put the foundation here, then brought it up and created an area of fill on my lot here. And then they moved the house. This post and beam house was originally at the top of the hill. In one winter, they moved it down with teams of oxen and set it in its new location. But in the meantime, something that you see very frequently in an old New England house like this is these boulders. And there's a couple, like right in the center here, there's a piece of granite. There's granite quarries around, and they would have dug the hole, set the boulders in place, dragged them up by oxen back in, 1910 or something to build the foundation. So this is a very frequent foundation construction mode that they would have used. They've patched it up a little bit with mortar, and kind of that's the thing. Now, what else is there to say? There's some copper pipes here. These are old. These are corroded. They were about, let's see now, 50 years old. And Mitch replaced them with PEX tubing. And PEX tubing has several advantages. One is you don't have to solder anything. But then the other thing is it does have a little bit of expansiveness in the otherwise hard plastic. So it's much less likely that PEX tubing will burst your pipes when it freezes because it has some give in it. Now, just right now, the sump pump cycled on, which is just a little irritating. Oh, it cycled off. Might as well go over and show you the other side. This is turning out to be longer than I thought it would be, but basically, this is the main part of the building, and then over here we have the addition over which the kitchen was built. And there is a dirt floor in here, and basically here's the sump pump. It cycled on for a little bit, but basically there's no water running into it. The other day it cycled on. I think it stayed on for about 20 hours. I don't know how much electricity that cost. But, you know, I just brought different things up here. I've got, what do I have? The yellow wire, which is 12 to goes to the circuit on which the refrigerator is. These things that are capped off, that's been completely discontinued, but you don't know what it's nailed to on the inside of the wall, which is part of the problem. So rather than spending time trying to retrieve the whole thing, that's what I did. And I have a GFCI down here specific to this, but I have GFCI on most outlets closer to the service panel anyway. So that's kind of what it looks like. There's the furnace and extra water in those orange things in case we needed to prime anything. We've never looked at the well casing. The well casing is underneath the back stairs, we are told. The previous owner told me that no one had looked at the well casing since about 1975. But it's supposedly there, so I haven't looked at it either. I think it's a deeper well than you might expect, but basically that's where it goes. And in wetter weather, water seeps out of those stones above where the pipes go in. And that's part of the thing here. It's like there's pretty sandy soil. All right, I'm going to end this